Minasan, konnichiwa, hello and welcome to my channel. If you hear any weird squeaking noises in the background, my son has recently discovered that he can make sounds and kind of just having conversations with his toys right now, so please excuse that. In this video, as the title suggests, I'm going to talk about some ways that Japan has changed me through my time living here. I'm going to talk about some of the ways that I have changed, as well as some of the things that when I came to Japan were really strange or surprising to me, but now are completely normal. A lot of these things I don't realize because obviously I'm adapting to the life in Japan, but they are very apparent when I go back to the UK. So please enjoy the points that I make in this video and leave your comments in the comment section if you'd like to share. Ikimashou. One of the biggest things that feature every single day for me is a change in diet. Now, I actually don't really remember what I used to eat in the UK. Nowadays, I am a huge fan of things like hampen, konnyaku, and exploring Japanese flavors. These are foods I think I never knew existed before I came to Japan. And I will be honest, in the first few years of living in Japan, I'd go to the supermarket and I'd see so many random packets of things that I had no idea what they were, how to use them. Sometimes I did buy things and was pleasantly surprised at times, and also sometimes I knew never to buy them again. But coming to Japan, the first few years of exploring Japanese food was so exciting for me. I do feel that Japanese food is healthy, but I will say that I have gained quite a lot of weight since being in Japan. I do feel though that it's not that I got fat, it's more that I got a bit more balanced with my eating. And this is my next point, is that when I came to Japan, I was kind of a carbophobe. Like, I didn't really like having carbohydrates so much, whereas now it is not a complete meal if there's not some rice on the table. I have completely converted to white rice and also genmai, brown rice. I have both of those in the cupboard, and I kind of switch between the two when preparing dinners. Also, I really did not like ika. I could not eat ika, and whenever I ate hako, like fermented foods, it gave me a funny tummy. Whereas now I think that I'm adapting. I can eat things like natto, takoan, or other pickles I can eat and I can enjoy them. And yeah, I really used to hate sashimi ika. I found it really slimy, the texture really grossed me out. Now it's like one of my favorite ones to eat. So yeah, it's interesting that your tastes really change the longer you live here. Through my time in Japan, I certainly got used to things being on time and running smoothly. It was a shock at first. I remember seeing on the ground of the platform, the train platform, there's like places where you can line up. There's places where people are supposed to get off. It's all so organized, so perfect. And the fact that they have different air-conditioned levels in each carriage. You know, you can have a mildly air-conditioned car or a strong air-conditioned car. It amazed me when I first saw that, because I thought that is the pinnacle of organization, and it just makes sense. However, when I went back to the UK, I was waiting for a train, I think for about 30 minutes, for no apparent reason. It was just like, yeah, the train's just not going to come. That does happen quite a lot in the UK. Trains stop, there are strikes, and you just can't travel by train. For a train to be late is very normal, and there will be no apology or no compensation or anything like that. It's pretty normal. So having things run on time and be organized and clean, those are really nice aspects to daily life in Japan, and especially transportation or public places. Talking of public places, having just become a mum, I have suddenly become aware of nursing rooms. Now, this is amazing because you can just go, lock the door, and nurse your baby in your own privacy. However, on this point, I think that in the UK, people aren't so afraid of just sitting in a cafe or restaurant and nursing their baby. However, I think people who don't like to see that are more vocal about it. I'd say like most people won't be shocked or nervous if you start breastfeeding in public. However, there is a small percentage of people who think that breasts are more toys for men, and they may say something. Not everyone is like that at all, but yeah, I would say people are a lot more vocal, not just about breastfeeding, but about their opinions. So if they see something that they don't like, they probably or might very likely say something, especially if it's something like, why don't you give up your seat to a pregnant woman on a train, or you can't talk to people like that, some kind of like attitude. I'd say in Japan, I wouldn't say like it's uncommon to breastfeed in public, but you just don't see it so much because of things like nursing rooms. That makes it a lot more easy for mothers who are a little bit self-conscious to be able to feed their child. In so many aspects, I think Japan has thought about things like nursing rooms or train instructions of where to stand on the platform to prevent collisions of people. Like, Japan thinks of things that make complete sense, but you just don't find in other countries, at least not as far as I know. One massive way that I've changed by living in Japan is my clothing style. Now I think I do cover up a lot more. It makes me feel more comfortable, and I think it also makes the people around me feel a bit more comfortable too. I also noticed Japanese people generally tend to prefer looser clothes, more flowing skirts or non-tight fitting tops, for example, to prevent exposing yourself too much. And I think in some ways I have adapted to that too. I say this point because, yeah, when I go back to the UK, I'm kind of surprised at how many bare legs and bare feet. Yes, this is another thing. People in Japan often wear socks, I'd say, whereas I don't think it's really done so much in the UK. Yeah, generally I've noticed a lot of sock wearing in Japan, and I have started doing that a lot because I believe that like keeping my feet warm is good for my general health, and right now it's health and comfort over beauty for sure. Okay, this was something that shocked me so much when I came to Japan and is now completely normal to me. Particularly a drugstore or a supermarket, they will have their items for sale around the entrance or like outside the actual store. In the UK, you just do not do that. If you did that, you would not have anything left outside. People will be like, oh cool, and just take it. Like, not everyone obviously, but you just wouldn't. As a shopkeeper, you wouldn't store your items outside the shop itself. You just like wouldn't do it. So that was a real surprise to me to see that in Japan, and not just in local places, but places like Shibuya. There are drugstores with items all around the outside and nobody steals them. It's amazing. You can have that confidence to store things outside and trust other people are not going to take them. Another thing that really surprised me, when I went back to the UK, it was a Sunday evening, Sunday afternoon, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to the supermarket. And my mum was like, it's closed. So on Sundays in the UK and in Europe, many places in Europe, I think, the opening hours are shortened. All the big supermarkets will close. We don't have convenience stores in the UK. So it really is a case of having to buy everything just in case for the Sunday evening. Living in Japan, you just get so used to the fact that there's a convenience store on every corner and things are open basically any time. You can find many 24/7 restaurants open. It's so accessible and easy to find stuff. I don't think there's 1 hour where everything is closed. And nowadays, even on Oshogatsu, which is our equivalent to Christmas, there are shops still open. The convenience level is so great in Japan that I think when you go back to your own country, myself, I am surprised by how you really have to try and search for food or be organized about preparing food beforehand. So yeah, no shopping after 5 p.m. on a Sunday in the UK. I completely admit, like, put my hands up, I used to do this. As a British person, when you see that there's no cars coming and you want to cross the road, you cross the road. In Japan, however, people wait very patiently for the green man before they can cross. And this didn't make sense to me for probably about 3 or 4 years. I thought, why don't we just cross? You know, you can see that nothing is coming, it's completely safe. Now I think, particularly having a little one, I am much more cautious, and in a way it's less stressful for me to think about. Just wait for the green man, then you know you can go. And obviously now I'm not just responsible for myself, I'm responsible for my son. So yeah, I do wait at the green man, but that was something really interesting. And then when I went back to the UK and I saw people just dashing across the road, I mean, that was like way more than you would do in Japan, because people can see a car is coming, but they cross anyway because they feel like, okay, I probably have about enough time. But yeah, when I went back to the UK and I saw that, I felt like, oh my God, stop. But yeah, I've definitely, in that sense, adapted to life in Japan. Yeah, I mean, okay, so my standards have completely changed when it comes to cleanliness. A simple example is taking off your shoes before you come into the house. I cannot imagine walking around my house in my outside shoes now. Like, how did I do that for so many years? I think it's like you don't think about it so much. You don't think like, oh, I have to take off my shoes at this line. Whereas as someone who does the majority of cleaning in my house, I'm like, why on earth would we tramp around our house in the outside dirt? Anyway, it just, yeah, I really have become aware of that now. But other little things, like it's nice for things to be clean. So before, when I used to prepare a meal, I'd be cooking the food and put pans and stuff in the sink and things, but I wouldn't necessarily clean everything before eating. Whereas now I feel it's a bit slovenly, like it's nicer to enjoy a meal when everything's sort of clean in the kitchen and you can just sit down and enjoy it. Whereas before I just didn't, I thought, you know, let's eat whilst the food is hot, let's enjoy now. Now I think I've kind of changed in the sense that the clean element of life kind of helps me to relax and it feels good, right? It feels like I've ticked all the boxes and now I can sit down and enjoy my meal. Another thing that I've really gotten used to in Japan is the attention to detail. I think I will always notice this thing when I go to the supermarket and the shop staff scan each item and they pack it in such a beautiful, careful order in the basket. In the UK, it's kind of like they scan your item and it goes flying off down the other sort of conveyor belt and you have to quickly grab stuff and hope nothing is smashed. Whereas in Japan, the shop staff, they even organize things like put the heavy stuff at the bottom or put the delicate stuff at the top. It's so beautiful. Like, I know it's not really something we notice so much because we live here and we see it every day, but do take a moment next time and look at how organized and beautifully packaged or presented your basket is by the time you've finished buying your items. It's amazing. Similarly, the way that people wrap things is just so perfect. I wish that I could learn how to do it because when a gift is wrapped, it's so beautifully done that I almost don't want to unwrap it because it's just like, it's art, the way that these shop staff package your gifts. Really wonderful. So I notice this when I'm going back to the UK or I'm sending gifts to the UK and I say to people, what would you like? And they ask me for the simplest of things. Like as a Japanese person or as someone living in Japan, you just wouldn't even think about it. Things like senbei. My mum is recently really obsessed with this like senbei. I'll put a picture of it here. She absolutely loves it. She said, please bring as many packets as you can back from Japan. Other things include a tamagoyaki pan. Apparently that is in demand. I've had a request anything from Daiso because, yeah, my family saw how great Daiso is. I think most foreigners see how great Daiso is because if we buy something that's that cheap, it's going to be very bad quality or it's going to break pretty much straight away. And the last thing that I've somewhat adjusted to and very much appreciate is people's consideration. In the West, we're a lot more individualistic. We like to get things done and assert ourselves. And in Japan, it is a lot more about the collective, thinking about other people, and sometimes biting your own tongue to save face or to maintain social harmony. Now, sometimes at first, I did find this a bit frustrating, especially when people didn't express how they truly felt. I found that was a little bit of a struggle. But I think the longer that you live in Japan, the more you learn to read the air, read the room, or understand how that action that you do might affect someone else. I think living in Japan, myself and possibly for many foreigners, you do learn to be a lot more socially aware. So instead of just seeing this, you kind of see this and you understand that your actions do have a domino effect on the people or the environment around you. I guess in some ways I do feel a lot more self-aware, like, for example, in my relationship, I must say, like, I do feel that with my Japanese husband, I'm able to express myself pretty much completely. But there are moments where I think I don't need to express those things, because is me asserting my feelings and my thoughts, is that going to help the harmony of our relationship? And if it's not going to help, I do try to bite my tongue. And I think that's a really important lesson for me anyway, to understand yourself as part of a social network. I think that's a really beautiful thing, and I think it saves a lot of trouble or social conflict. And whether that's kindness or whether that's just trying to show up in a good light, it's just a nice dynamic to live in. I always felt kind of scared when, for example, I was on the train in London and two strangers who'd never met each other before started having a bit of a conflicted or heated conversation. For example, some people might sit on the chair and on the seats opposite put their feet up. And of course, like, that would never happen in Japan in the first place. But even if a Japanese person did that, probably most people would just not say anything. Whereas in London, someone might say, "Oi, take your feet off that chair, that's disgusting." So whenever that kind of thing happened, I just feel really kind of like, oh my God, don't look, I'm scared. And similarly, loud public conversations. I think when you're talking between each other, you know, when a group of women meet and they're all excited, they may have a slightly louder conversation than normal. Whereas things like chatting on the train, on your phone, the idea of having public phone conversations at a loud volume doesn't seem to bother people in the UK. Now, I would never dream of doing it, but I'm sure in the past I was guilty of doing that. Okay, I hope that these points were helpful. If you have experience living overseas and you've changed in any ways, or any aspects of life in Japan that you really appreciate, please do share in the comment section, because even if it's something that we're really used to, I think it's really nice to appreciate these things and really notice what is in front of us. So, thank you very much, and until next time, bye bye.